You imagine a fleet of brightly painted aircraft crossing the sky every few minutes. Passengers fill the seats, the planes land, refuel, board another group of travelers, and take off again. You sell tickets for less than your competitors, attract enormous crowds, and make up for the lower price with volume. A traditional airline might charge $200 for a flight. You charge $49. They offer lounges, free meals, connecting baggage, multiple cabin classes, and expensive airport terminals. You offer a seat. And because millions of passengers care more about price than luxury, your planes stay full while the old airlines struggle to compete. From the outside, the business can look almost unfairly powerful. You are not trying to persuade people to buy something they do not need. People already want to travel. They want to visit family. They want cheap vacations. They want weekend trips. They want to reach another city without spending 8 hours driving. All you have to do is make flying cheaper. Here's the problem. A low-cost airline does not operate in a low-cost industry. Aircraft are expensive. Fuel is expensive. Pilots are expensive. Maintenance is expensive. Airports charge fees. Governments charge taxes. Weather creates delays. A mechanical problem can ground an aircraft that was supposed to generate revenue across 6 separate flights that day. And every time one of your planes takes off, you commit thousands of dollars before knowing whether the passengers sitting inside have actually paid enough to cover the journey. The airline industry is expected to transport billions of passengers and generate more than $1 trillion in annual revenue. Yet industry-wide net profit margins remain only a few percentage points. The expected profit per passenger is often less than the price of an airport sandwich. Think about that. You can purchase or lease hundreds of aircraft, hire tens of thousands of employees, operate across multiple countries, carry millions of people, collect billions of dollars in revenue. And after paying everyone involved, you may keep less than $10 for each passenger you transported. That is the contradiction at the center of the business. A low-cost airline must convince customers that flying is almost unbelievably cheap while operating one of the most capital-intensive, regulated, and operationally fragile systems in the world. So the real question is not how a low-cost airline can sell a cheap ticket. The real question is how it can survive after selling one. And to understand that, you have to begin with the product itself. Because a low-cost airline is not really selling flights. It is selling empty seats before they expire. An airline seat is a strange form of inventory. A supermarket can keep an unsold box of cereal and try to sell it tomorrow. A dealership can keep an unsold car on the lot. A hotel can at least sell the same room again the following night. But when an aircraft door closes and the plane leaves the gate, every empty seat becomes worthless. Permanently. You cannot store it. You cannot return it to inventory. You cannot sell yesterday's empty seat next week. The value disappears the moment the flight departs. This means the airline is constantly racing against time. If a flight has 180 seats and only 130 passengers, the aircraft still requires pilots. It still requires cabin crew. It still burns nearly the same amount of fuel. It still pays landing fees. It still needs maintenance. The missing passengers reduce a little weight, but they do not eliminate the basic cost of operating the flight. So once the airline has decided to fly, selling another seat for $30 may be better than leaving it empty. That is why ticket prices can behave in ways that seem irrational. A passenger booking months in advance may pay less than the cost of checking a bag. Another passenger booking the same seat the night before departure may pay 5 times more. The seat is identical. The cost of transporting the passenger is almost identical. But the airline is not pricing the physical product. It is pricing probability. How likely is the flight to fill? How many people are still searching? How urgently do they need to travel? Are they going on vacation, or are they attending a meeting tomorrow morning? How much time remains before the inventory expires? The goal is not to sell every seat at the highest price. The goal is to extract the highest possible total revenue from an aircraft whose inventory disappears at departure. Traditional airlines do this through complicated fare classes, corporate contracts, premium cabins, loyalty programs, and connecting networks. Low-cost airlines simplify part of the system. But they do not eliminate the pricing game. They make the cheapest price extremely visible. Then they build the rest of the business around what happens after the customer clicks. This is where everything changes. The $49 ticket is often not the final product. It is the entrance. You want to choose a seat? That costs extra. You want to bring a large cabin bag? Extra. You want to check luggage? Extra. You want priority boarding? Extra. You want flexibility in case your plans change? Extra. You want food, a drink, travel insurance, a rental car, or a hotel room? The airline may earn a commission from those too. The modern airline industry generates well over $100 billion annually from ancillary and other revenue. For many low-cost carriers, these extras are not a minor bonus. They are part of the central economic model. The airline uses a low advertised fare to win the passenger's attention. Then it allows each passenger to construct a different final price. A traveler carrying only a backpack can pay almost nothing beyond the fare. A family traveling for a week may pay for 4 seats, several bags, assigned seating, food, and priority boarding. Both passengers are technically flying on the same low-cost airline, but they are purchasing very different products. This creates a powerful form of price segmentation. Passengers who care only about reaching the destination can receive a very low price. Passengers who care about convenience pay more. Passengers who make mistakes pay more too. A bag that would have been cheaper online may become significantly more expensive at the airport. A passenger who fails to check in correctly may face another fee. The complexity is not always accidental. Every restriction creates another opportunity to charge for flexibility. And every optional service allows the airline to advertise a lower headline fare without giving every passenger the full experience included by a traditional carrier. That is the first hidden system. The low-cost airline does not necessarily make air travel cheap. It separates air travel into pieces and forces passengers to reveal which pieces they are willing to pay for. But ancillary revenue alone does not create a successful low-cost carrier. Because before you can charge passengers for bags and seats, you need an aircraft. And aircraft are where the fantasy becomes expensive. A new narrow-body jet can cost tens of millions of dollars, even after the substantial discounts airlines commonly negotiate from published prices. A startup airline is unlikely to simply purchase an entire fleet with cash. It may lease aircraft from specialized leasing companies. That reduces the immediate capital requirement, but it creates a fixed monthly obligation. The lease payment continues whether the aircraft is full, half empty, delayed, or temporarily grounded. Then you need engines, spare parts, maintenance reserves, insurance, training, software, operating certificates, airport agreements, ground handling contracts, customer service systems, crew scheduling, revenue management, a website capable of processing thousands of bookings without failing during a promotion, and enough working capital to survive before the route network becomes profitable. This is why launching an airline is not like opening another retail location. You cannot begin with one cheap airplane, fly whenever demand appears, and gradually figure everything out. Commercial aviation depends on systems. Pilots must maintain qualifications. Aircraft must follow precise maintenance schedules. Crews can work only within regulated limits. Passengers expect the flight to operate on the date and time printed on the ticket. If your single aircraft develops a technical problem, your entire airline may stop. So you need redundancy. But redundancy means owning or leasing capacity that may not always generate revenue. That creates the next contradiction. The airline needs spare capacity to remain reliable, but the low-cost model depends on eliminating anything that is not producing revenue. The solution is not to make the aircraft cheap, it is to make the aircraft productive. A low-cost carrier wants its planes in the air as much as possible. An aircraft sitting at a gate is not generating passenger revenue. An aircraft waiting for a cleaning crew is not generating passenger revenue. An aircraft parked overnight at an expensive airport is not generating passenger revenue. The plane becomes economically useful when it is carrying paying passengers, so the business is built around utilization. Land, unload, clean quickly, board quickly, refuel, take off again. A traditional network airline may keep an aircraft on the ground while passengers from several connecting flights arrive at a hub. A low-cost carrier often prefers direct, point-to-point routes. The aircraft does not need to wait for a wave of connecting passengers. It can arrive, turn around, and leave. A few saved minutes may not sound important, but multiply those minutes across every flight, every aircraft, and every day of the year. A faster turnaround can allow an airline to add another flight to the daily schedule. That additional flight spreads the aircraft's ownership or leasing cost across more passengers. The aircraft has not become cheaper. You are simply forcing the same expensive asset to produce more units of inventory. This is the same reason low-cost airlines often use a single aircraft family. If most of your fleet consists of similar Boeing 737s or Airbus A320 family aircraft, pilot training becomes simpler. Crew scheduling becomes more flexible. Maintenance teams need expertise in fewer systems. Spare parts inventories can be consolidated. A pilot qualified on one aircraft can potentially operate many planes across the fleet. If you operate 5 unrelated aircraft types, you do not really have one airline. You have 5 smaller operational systems sharing a logo. Fleet simplicity removes some of that duplication, but it creates a new risk. If a widespread engine or aircraft problem affects your chosen model, a large portion of the fleet can be grounded simultaneously. The simplicity that reduces cost during normal operations can concentrate damage during a crisis. Here is the trap. Efficiency and resilience are not the same thing. A low-cost airline is designed to remove spare time, spare equipment, and unnecessary complexity. But spare resources are exactly what help a company recover when something goes wrong. Imagine one of your aircraft begins the day with 6 scheduled flights. The first departure is delayed by a maintenance inspection. The second flight now leaves late. The third arrives after the airport becomes congested. The crew approaches its legal working time limit. The final flight may need to be canceled. One technical delay has moved through the schedule like a crack through glass. Now, hundreds of passengers require rebooking, refunds, hotels, meals, or compensation depending on the jurisdiction and circumstances. The low-cost carrier may not have another aircraft nearby. It may not operate several alternative flights that day. It may not have partnerships allowing passengers to transfer easily onto competitors. A network airline's complexity can be expensive, but sometimes that complexity provides options. A low-cost carrier's simplicity saves money until the system breaks. Then the lack of alternatives becomes its own cost. This is why route selection matters so much. The popular image of an airline executive is someone choosing exciting destinations on a map. In reality, the route network is a portfolio of economic experiments. How many people want to travel between these two cities? How seasonal is the demand? Are passengers traveling for business, tourism, or family visits? How much are they willing to pay? Will competitors respond? What are the airport fees? Can the aircraft complete several trips per day? Will the schedule allow the crews and plane to return to a base efficiently? A route with huge passenger demand is not automatically attractive. If 5 airlines already compete on it, fares may collapse. A smaller route may have less traffic, but stronger pricing. A secondary airport may charge lower fees, but passengers may dislike its location. An airport 50 kilometers outside a famous city can be marketed using the city's name, but the ground journey may become longer than the flight. For the airline, that inconvenience may be an advantage. Secondary airports are often less congested. Turnarounds can be faster. Landing charges may be lower. The airline may possess more bargaining power because its flights bring meaningful passenger volume to the region. In some cases, airports or local authorities may offer incentives to attract new service. A low-cost carrier can therefore turn its route network into a negotiation tool. It is not only selling transportation to passengers, it is also selling passenger traffic to airports and destinations. Bring us lower fees, and we may bring you tourists. Increase the charges, and the aircraft can be moved somewhere else. That flexibility becomes more powerful when the airline has a large fleet and a recognizable brand. A startup with 3 aircraft cannot credibly threaten to transform regional tourism. A carrier with hundreds of planes can. Scale changes the conversation, but scale also increases the consequences of being wrong. Order too few aircraft, and you cannot grow. Order too many, and you may be forced to create capacity faster than profitable demand appears. The planes will arrive, lease payments will begin. Crews must be hired. Management then has to find somewhere for the aircraft to fly. This can encourage aggressive expansion into marginal routes. The airline may sell extremely cheap tickets to stimulate demand. Passenger numbers rise. Headlines celebrate growth. Revenue increases. But growth does not automatically create profit. An airline can fill an aircraft and still lose money. This is the part that many people misunderstand. Load factor measures how many seats are occupied. It does not measure whether those seats were sold at profitable prices. A flight that is 95% full with deeply discounted passengers may perform worse than a flight that is 85% full at stronger fares. The airline must balance load factor with yield, meaning the revenue earned from the traffic carried. Fill the plane too slowly and empty seats expire. Cut fares too aggressively, and the plane can be full of customers who did not pay enough. This creates a strange pricing cycle. When demand appears weak, the airline lowers fares. Lower fares attract passengers. Competitors respond. The market becomes accustomed to cheap tickets. Now raising prices becomes difficult. The low-cost carrier has stimulated demand, but it may also have trained customers to wait for a sale. And low-cost passengers are often highly price-sensitive. A difference of $20 can move them from one airline to another. Brand loyalty exists, but price can overpower it quickly. That means the airline must remain cheaper without allowing its cost advantage to disappear. And costs have a habit of growing. Start with labor. The low-cost model is often described as if machines operate the business. But airlines require people: pilots, cabin crew, mechanics, dispatchers, ground staff, customer service agents, security personnel, technology teams, operations controllers, managers. Some services can be outsourced, but the work still has to be performed and paid for. As the airline expands, employees gain experience and seniority. Wages rise. Unions may negotiate stronger contracts. Pilot shortages can increase compensation. A low-cost carrier that begins with a young, inexpensive workforce does not remain young forever. The company matures. Its cost base matures with it. Then there is maintenance. New aircraft are generally more efficient and may require fewer heavy repairs at the beginning of their operating lives. But aircraft age. Engines require shop visits. components wear out. Inspections become more extensive. Taking an aircraft out of service creates both a maintenance expense and a revenue loss. And because global supply chains for aircraft, engines, and parts can become constrained, airlines may be forced to keep older aircraft longer than planned or pay more for replacements and leases. Then there is the cost that can transform the entire income statement almost overnight. Fuel. An airline cannot simply stop buying fuel because the price becomes unattractive. Without fuel, the product disappears. Fuel prices are influenced by global oil markets, refining capacity, exchange rates, geopolitics, and disruptions far beyond the airline's control. Carriers often hedge part of their future fuel requirements. That can create temporary protection. If fuel prices rise, the hedge may save money. If prices fall, the airline may remain locked into a higher effective cost than competitors. Hedging does not eliminate uncertainty. It changes the timing and distribution of the risk. And fuel exposes the central weakness of cheap tickets. When costs rise suddenly, the airline cannot always increase fares immediately. Many passengers have already booked. Competitors may refuse to raise their prices. Demand may weaken at exactly the same moment. The company is trapped between a cost it cannot control and a customer who chose the airline specifically because it was cheap. The industry received another reminder of this risk in 2026, when sharply higher fuel costs forced airlines to emphasize ancillary revenue and higher pricing even as demand remained sensitive. Fuel does not care about your brand. It does not care how efficient your website is. It does not care how many passengers paid for priority boarding. If the price changes by enough, the entire economics of the route changes. Now add airports. Every landing creates charges. Every passenger can create fees. Every aircraft may pay for parking, gates, security, ground handling, and navigation services. Major airports provide access to large, affluent populations. They also tend to be expensive and congested. Secondary airports may be cheaper, but cheaper airport fees are useless if passengers will not travel there. A low-cost airline is constantly trading convenience against cost. Move too far from the customer, and the fare must become even lower. Move too close to the customer, and airport expenses may destroy the cost advantage. Then governments enter the equation. Airlines face safety regulation, consumer protection rules, taxes, environmental requirements, ownership restrictions, labor rules, and compensation obligations. Some regulations protect passengers and create essential safety standards. But from the owner's perspective, each new rule can alter the cost structure. A charge that appears to be a small amount per passenger becomes enormous across tens of millions of travelers. The opposite is also true. An additional $5 of ancillary revenue per passenger can transform the annual result when multiplied across a huge network. This is why low-cost airlines obsess over small numbers. One more seat squeezed into the cabin, a few minutes removed from turnaround time. A slightly lighter seat, reducing aircraft weight. More passengers checking in online. Fewer free items carried on board. A small commission from a hotel booking. A small improvement in fuel consumption. None of these changes looks revolutionary. Together, they create the cost advantage. The business is not built around one brilliant trick. It is built around hundreds of tiny efficiencies enforced with unusual discipline. And that discipline often produces the customer experience people complain about. Strict baggage dimensions reduce boarding delays and limit weight. Non-reclining seats can reduce maintenance and allow tighter spacing. Remote boarding stairs can be cheaper than jet bridges. No free meal reduces catering complexity, cleaning time, and weight. Flying early in the morning or late at night can improve aircraft utilization and access cheaper airport slots. The passenger sees inconvenience. The airline sees minutes, kilograms, and dollars. This does not mean every unpopular policy is economically necessary. Some carriers push fees and restrictions so aggressively that they damage trust. But the underlying logic is consistent. Every included service becomes a cost paid by all passengers. Every optional service becomes a charge paid by the passengers who use it. The low-cost airline tries to move as much as possible from the first category into the second. That is how it can claim to democratize travel while charging someone extra to sit beside their child. Both statements can be true. The base fare may genuinely allow more people to fly. The final price may also be significantly higher than the advertisement suggested. The airline's skill lies in keeping the first number emotionally powerful and the second number economically sufficient. Now imagine the airline succeeds. The aircraft are full. Ancillary revenue is strong. Turnarounds are fast. Costs are lower than competitors. This is where the next problem appears. Competitors can see what you are doing. A traditional airline may create a basic economy fare. Another low-cost carrier may enter the same route. A national airline may temporarily cut prices to defend its hub. The airport may raise charges once your operation becomes established. Employees may demand a share of the success. Aircraft manufacturers and leasing companies may negotiate from a stronger position during shortages. The cost advantage is not a trophy you win once. It must be defended every day. And the larger the airline becomes, the harder it may be to behave like a small disruptive company. Passengers expect more support. Governments pay more attention. Operational failures affect more people. The route network becomes harder to coordinate. Management adds departments. Departments add procedures. Procedures add cost. The low-cost carrier begins to experience the same complexity it was originally designed to avoid. This is why some of the most successful low-cost airlines appear almost culturally obsessed with cost. They negotiate publicly. They challenge airports. They standardize everything possible. They make decisions that seem unnecessarily harsh. The behavior is not simply about saving money this quarter. It protects the identity of the business. Once the company begins acting like a traditional airline without earning traditional premium revenue, the model can unravel. Consider what happens during a recession. Leisure passengers may reduce travel. Price-sensitive customers become even more sensitive. Business travel may weaken. The airline cuts fares to fill seats. But aircraft leases, salaries, maintenance obligations, and many airport costs remain. Now consider a boom. Demand rises. Flights fill. But fuel, wages, airport charges, and aircraft leases may rise too. The airline earns more revenue. Yet the entire supply chain attempts to capture part of the gain. Airlines live between these pressures. When demand is weak, revenue disappears quickly. When demand is strong, costs chase it. And because the industry is highly visible, competitors are constantly tempted to add capacity when conditions look attractive. More aircraft create more seats. More seats create price competition. Price competition erodes the profit that encouraged the growth in the first place. This is why airlines have repeatedly produced enormous revenues without consistently producing returns that justify the capital invested. The product is popular, the business is difficult. Low-cost carriers can outperform because they start with structural advantages. Higher seat density, simpler fleets, faster turnarounds, direct distribution, fewer included services, more ancillary revenue, lower-cost airports. But none of those advantages repeals the fundamental laws of the airline industry. The aircraft must remain safe. The schedule must work, fuel must be purchased, crews must be available, passengers must arrive, and the weather is allowed to ignore your spreadsheet. So what does the owner of a successful low-cost airline actually own? Not the sky, not the passengers, not even, in many cases, all the aircraft. You own a scheduling system, a pricing system, a cost control system, a network of airport relationships, a brand built around the promise of cheap movement, and thousands of operational decisions that must align closely enough for a small margin to survive. The cheap ticket is the visible part. Underneath it sits an industrial machine. The aircraft must fly enough hours. The seats must fill at the right prices. The passengers must purchase enough extras. The turnaround must remain fast. The route must produce enough demand. Fuel must stay within a manageable range. Crews must remain productive. Maintenance must be completed without destroying the schedule. And the airline must repeat the process hundreds or thousands of times every day. That is the economics of owning a low-cost airline. You are not simply selling cheaper flights than everyone else. You are taking an expensive, fragile product and removing everything that does not help it move passengers or generate revenue. You are offering customers a low starting price while calculating how much convenience they will buy back. You are spreading enormous fixed costs across as many seats, flights, and paying passengers as the system can safely handle. And you are betting that operational discipline can protect you from fuel markets, weather, regulation, labor costs, mechanical failures, and competitors who are trying to do exactly the same thing. From the terminal window, it still looks simple. Passengers board, the doors close, the aircraft takes off. Another flight lands behind it. Money appears to be moving through the sky, but the plane is not profitable because it is flying. It is profitable only if nearly every minute, seat, fee, route, and kilogram has been designed to support the same promise. A promise that sounds almost impossible when stated honestly. Make one of the world's most expensive forms of transportation feel cheap, and somehow keep the difference.